Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Before we begin our conversation on safety on Nigeria's waterways, let's take this background report by Joseph Olsen.
With two major rivers, River Benue and River Niger, and their tributaries, Nigeria is reported to have about 10,000 kilometer waterways. If adequately enhanced, the routes will not just ease the pressure on the roads and high cost of air travels, but will also serve as a major boost in the transportation system and the nation's economy. With large vessels transporting crude oil and other goods, the waterways remain the most common means of transporting people and goods in rural riverine communities in Nigeria. But the increasing number of waterway accidents in the country in recent times are becoming worrisome. More than 300 lives were reportedly lost to both accidents in 2023, with Lagos, Kebbi, Taraba, Niger, Kwara, and Anambra states most affected. For instance, in February, a commercial boat with 7 passengers capsized near the 3rd Million Bridge in Lagos State. June 13th, more than 100 people were said to have died after a boat conveying mostly women and children returning from a wedding event capsized in Egbu village of Kwara State. And in September, there was another devastating disaster when a boat conveying over 100 passengers on their way to their farms capsized in Mokwa area of Niger State. About 24 passengers lost their lives in the accident. Another catastrophe was in October, where 76 people reportedly died following a boat accident in the Baru local government of Anambra State. The sad incidents were blamed on various reasons, including overloading, faulty engines, and lack of life jackets. In many villages, the use of rickety and overloaded boats with passengers without life jackets are common. All these point to the neglect of investment and regulation in the industry over the years.
The basic instruction that we are giving today for life-saving measures is that any boat that is going to ferry people across, that each occupant of the boat must wear a life jacket. In the event that something happens, the person will be floating.
The recurrent boat mishaps prompted President Bola Tinubu in September last year to order an investigation into the accidents and directed the Nigerian Maritime Safety Authority and law enforcement agencies to collaborate and identify the root causes of the unfortunate and preventable disasters. The questions on the lips of many include: why the increase in boat mishaps in recent times? Why are water transporters failing to comply with safety regulations? Are regulatory bodies adequately monitoring compliance? And how best can Nigeria enhance its waterways to serve citizens and boost the nation's economy? These questions and other related issues are now on the table for guests on Good Morning Nigeria to give perspectives.
Many thanks, Joseph, for the background report. And like you said, joining us on the table to discuss safety on our waterways is Godwin Aduga. The health is a health and environment professional. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. We also have joining us for the conversation via Zoom, all the way from Lagos, Engineer Sarat Brima, the Lagos Area Manager, National Inland Waterways Authority. Many thanks for joining us, ma'am.
Good morning.
Okay. Also from Lagos studio is Engineer Emmanuel Ilori. He is the former Senior Marine Surveyor, Lloyd's Register, London. Engineer Ilori, you are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Okay, that's Engineer Ilori there. We also have Dr. Gidado Shehu Usman, Deputy Director, Transport School, Nigerian Institute of Transport Technology, NITT Zaria. Dr. Gidado Shehu Usman, you are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Ademola. Good morning, Nigerians. Welcome, viewers.
Thank you so much for joining us. Maybe we should just kickstart the conversation and let's look at what actually happened on Wednesday. Do we have any vital information? Do you? Or maybe if you don't, maybe we'll ask any of our guests. Do you have any vital information on what actually happened last Wednesday? And what can you tell us that actually, from your own experience and your perspective, what resulted to that incident?
First of all, I'd like to say that boat accidents happen, rather too frequently in Nigeria. And, the report was actually talking about the fact that why is it increasing? But the truth is, it is not increasing. What is happening is that there's more reporting about it. So more people are beginning to learn about it and there's more sensitization. So it's actually catching the attention of people. What happened in Annam last week was rather unfortunate because it is not different from what was reported, a boat accident, and it led to the ultimate demise of a Nollywood actor. But and other people, the crew, people who were in makeup and in other aspects of movie making. It was a capsize, right? The specifics of the capsize is not actually very clear, but the boats actually did capsize, and unfortunately, at the same time, the passengers on that boat were not, with their life jackets. And what is even more frustrating is that there seemed to be a lack of response, and here's what I mean. When the passengers fell into, capsized and fell into the river, I want you to understand that this river we're talking about is not a pool of stagnant water. It's not like a swimming pool, right? This is a river that has currents. It bobs ups and down, and there is panic. These are two ingredients for disaster, right? When there's current and there's panic. In health and safety, these two things can actually lead to drowning rather quickly. Now, you can also expect someone to be able to swim, but for how long? Now, when currents actually move around, and there's of course panic, it's really difficult to sustain a calm composure. This is what a lot of people were expecting. But my opinion about this is that it was, I would say, a mishap that was not prepared for. Now, the reason why it's making the rounds is because there are very popular people involved, but these things happen almost every time. And it's also good that we're having this conversation as a result of that. But what I would say is that it's obvious that the actors or the movie makers on that boat were not having any safety equipment. It was obvious that there was no other boat really close by throwing a line. It's one of the safety precautions. You have to have a line on your boat, on the other boats. Never go swimming alone. You have to have a line on on the other boat. You can throw to other people who are drowning, get them pulled back into a rescue boat, and none of such things were happening. I want to also believe that perhaps the boat was just something that was hurriedly put together to help them get to the location quicker, because I also did learn that the location of the shoot could have been accessed by road, but it was going to take a longer time. So they were trying to save time by cutting the journey, using the waterway. Of course, it eventually happened, and of course, boats can capsize for a number of reasons. A current, a driver's, carelessness, malfunction of the boat, or even temperature of the water. Sudden change in temperature can reduce or increase the viscosity, and of course wind. So a lot of these things.
All right, we'll discuss more on that.
Thank you, Adoga, for sharing your perspective with us as regards what happened last week. Let's get to Engineer Brima now, the Lagos Area Manager, National Inland Waterways Authority. We understand that there's an investigation going on as regards, the incident, the boat mishap last week. Could you give us a picture of what happened and then what your investigation has revealed so far?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm an engineer, Sarah Brima, of the National Inland Waterways Authority. Normally, that accident happened because there was no any safety rules and regulations that was being abided by those on board. The National Inland Waterways make it compulsory for anybody on water to be on life jackets at the boarding jetty. And unfortunately, that boat that was involved in that accident was not a registered boat. So it was not a boat known to the National Inland Waterways Authority. The owner has been arrested by National Inland Waterways Authority. Investigation going on shows that the captain was actually not even on life jacket too. All the people on board were not on life jackets. And when that incident happened, because all of them, none of them could swim, so there was no way a lot of them could come out by themselves. There was quick intervention by our rescue team. 7 people were rescued alive, but unfortunately, we lost about 4 to 5 of them. Investigation is still ongoing. It is not concluded yet. I cannot come and say this is what they have concluded on it. They are still ongoing. But we saw that it was the collision between 2 boats, and it was because the captain was distracted by videos, all those filming and so on. But investigation is still ongoing.
7 people were rescued alive from the river. How come you still lost 4 at the end of the day? What happened from the point of being, rescued from the river to when they were confirmed dead? What was the gap? What happened? Engineer Brima, so my question to you is, as regards your response, that 7 people were rescued from the river after the boat mishap, but you eventually lost 4 from what you said. What happened from the point where they were rescued alive to the point where they were confirmed dead? Why were they not, able to make it out at the end of the day? Could you just fill us in on what happened? Brima. Let's go to engineer. Right now, let's go to Dr. Usman, the Deputy Director, Transport School, Nigerian Institute of Transport Technology, Zaria. I'll ask you the same question. Just give us a sense. I know you may not be there, but give us a sense of what could have happened at the point where the 7 people were rescued. Why did they not make it at the end of the day? What were the gaps, or if you like, the lapses that could have happened, from the point where they were rescued to the point where they were confirmed dead?
Of course, there is always an impact when somebody who cannot swim and then found himself inside water. He will need breathing. He wouldn't know how to breathe. He will end up taking up water, and of course that can affect a lot of systems on the body. And most especially if there are no experts who can handle these victims effectively, or equipment needed to handle them, or the appropriate transportation system to take them to a hospital, definitely such trauma, which includes taking water and the fear of the water and the impact of, drowning, all this will add up if there is no proper care between the point of incidence and the hospital where they can be treated. Of course, it could be fatal.
Okay, Dr. Usman, I still want to stay with you. From what the engineer Brahma said, Lagos, that the boat operator was not given permission to operate. Now, let's look at the issue of enforcement now. Do you think that we have proper enforcement and regulation on our waterways in this country, going by the several incidences of casualties and deaths that have been recorded lately?
Enforcement, we should start from standardization first. We have to know what kind of standards of operations, what type of standard of boats, the jetties where these boats take off, and the very kind of operations we want to involve in on the waterways. Before we can now even design regulations that can fit and suit such operations. And having done that, of course, that's when actual enforcement starts. And if you look at it mostly in Nigeria today, most of our problems hinges around enforcing these standards, these regulations, these do and don'ts. There is a lot of flouting of the rules of the game as far as inland waterways transport is concerned. And when there are such misuse of the rules, of course, definitely mishaps could happen because one, in terms of the standards, the jetties where such trip starts must be of good repute. The boats that are to load must be of standards and must be worthy of carrying out that trip. And then the passengers that are to board such boats must be well kitted in terms of use of safety kits and life jackets. Then also the operator must have the requisite qualification, of course, to ride on these boats, and also must be in good state of, you often see drunken boat operators moving boats all around. So all these are, arising out of weak regulatory or the enforcement of these regulatory systems that have been on ground. Definitely, I agree very well that there are all the rules we need today to safeguard our waterways, but definitely their enforcement and the standardization of particularly operations. The boats are rickety too, many, particularly those that are in the outskirts. Within Lagos area, you can see one or two neat boats, well operated, but definitely this is not significant enough as far as the vast space we have to operate waterways transport in this country. Mind you, it's an important segment of our multimodal system which needs to contribute too, but definitely we've not been having that, and mostly it's because of the fear of incidents that go around that happens almost every other time. This is just the beginning of the season. As the rains go up, the waters go up, the need for travel sometimes by water also go up, and several security challenges are always there, of course. But if we can standardize, regulate, enforce these regulations, and ensure that there is compliance to it, and in fact sustain that compliance ratio to a large extent, that every person is aware of what he is embarking on, and particularly the level of compliance must be met to be understood, because there is a lot of need for enlightenment of both the operators and the users of inland waterway transport service in this country. Not just on a short trips, but even on a longer trips. We have long routes that could have been covered, commercially viable, substituting a lot of roads, haulage vehicles, and delivering goods in a very, in the cheapest form. Also, passengers can have it in a very nice, form by having trips that are both travels and enjoyment. Because if you look at the shape of our rivers, Niger and Benue, and how they go down to the lower Niger into the bifurcation, you will know that Nigeria is a beautiful country as far as waterways is concerned, because we have it in abundance. But are we taking real good advantage of it? Of course, no, because it is not contributing even up to 10% of what we expected from it. And
Thank you so much, Dr. Usman. Would I have to cut you there? Of course, we'll get back to you, to hear your perspectives on certain issues as regards our waterways. But let's quickly get to Engineer Emmanuel Ilori now, former senior marine surveyor, Lloyd's Register, London. Engineer Ilori, I'd like you to give us your own perspective of what, happened in the Anam incident, and then from reports that you've seen, just give us a picture of what you think happened. That's one. And then also give us your own assessment of our waterways, because when the Lagos area manager of NIWA was talking, she talked about that the particular boat was not registered. So what comes to my mind is who's supposed to register the boat? Who's supposed to monitor? Who's supposed to ensure that passengers have life jackets when they have to embark on the travel? All these are questions, but just let's hear your perspective.
In marine industry, and most like any other industry, you carry out a risk assessment of any undertaking. Now, the Anam incident, from what we heard from an environmental expert, it appears they did not carry out proper risk assessment, and then to put in place systems that will mitigate against this incident. It is very unfortunate. I think it's a national malaise. I think that should help us to put that in perspective, because I don't understand why they will carry out such an undertaking without carrying out proper safety risk assessment. On the inland waterway system, it is sad that there is an institutional neglect of this very vital sector of the economy, and we could spend hours to discuss this. Gidado has raised some issues there, because with 28 states of this nation covered by water, it should have given us a priority. We should have put more attention into the inland waterway system. In your introduction, you said that Mr. President set up a commission or a committee to look at the safety issues. Again, that is part of the usurpation of the positions of some of our institutions, and that is what inland waterways is suffering. The laws have made it clear who is responsible for activities at sea up to the breakwater. And then there's another institution responsible for activities in the inland waterway. So I don't know what they will be asking NIMASA to be taking on this responsibility, because they have different expertise, and then there are regulations all over. But let me make this point. Inland Waterways has been more or less the pariah organization of the maritime sector, with little attention to its development. The laws have made it so clear that the Inland Waterways Authority should actually be the leading organization for inland waterways, travel, activity, safety, you name it. But unfortunately, over the years, not only has it been neglected, other organizations have taken over their responsibility. We even hear Lagos State taking over some of their responsibility until recently that the Supreme Court ruled over it. So we cannot have that state to prevail and then we expect things to continue. Now, in terms of safety of life, I heard somebody saying that it's not increasing. With our population increasing to over 200 million, you expect the figures to rise, and then you expect us to have prepared for this. One of the issues of inland waterways travel that has been neglected over the years is the navigational safety. Unfortunately, on our waters, the navigational equipment are not there. The routes, it's like if you say somebody is driving and blindfolded, what do you expect to happen? Of course, he's going to crash. So, but the inland waterways, if you all you see the water. Do you know what is underneath the water? And that's why in better climes you have navigational channels. You put navigational equipments there so that those who travel on the water and those who navigate those boats, they will know which route to take. You're talking about enforcement. Enforcement is an institutional issue. But look at the quality of the boats on our waters. It is sad. So these are things that we could call work in progress, and I believe it calls for presidential intervention, because with 28 states covered by water, I mean, Gidado alluded to it, there are commercial activities involved, we have transport involved, so many issues. Our colonial masters saw the importance of the inland waterways, and they made it to sure that it contributed to the development of Nigeria. Why have we neglected inland waterways to the extent that people are dying? Let me add quickly. When the air, and I want to allude to the air industry, when planes were dropping like birds, like stones in the air, the president at that time, President Obasanjo, made sure that he took presidential action to revive the issue. I think at this point now we need a presidential intervention, not only to salvage our inland waterways for the development of this economy, but to ensure safety of lives. You see different agents now jumping into the inland waterways area, carrying out various activities to the neglect of the prime organization responsible to this. These are critical issues. Let the organization responsible carry out these functions. If there's a need for presidential intervention, so be it. And then let the organization that do not have any need to be there, let them move away from there. Let us empower the Inland Waterways Authority. If they are failing, we will ask them questions. But I think let's give other people time to react.
Thank you very much, Engineer Idori, for your contribution there. You have actually raised a lot of issues. The most potent one is the presidential intervention for us to be able to arrest all these accidents on our waterways. Let's come back to the studio where we have Godwin Adoga here. And we're talking about the issues of regulatory risk assessment, presidential. So my question would be, how can authorities be held accountable, you understand, for all this negligence, for this, these lapses? What can be done?
Well, the answer to this question, would be rather vague. From the policy point, just like the doctor has actually mentioned, I think we have quite a number of agencies doing the same things and not even doing it effectively. It wouldn't be such a terrible thing if they were all collaborating and we could actually see tangible results. The truth of the matter is our waterways are not as developed as we would like them to be. The attention we are paying to this issue sadly is coming at a point where popular people have been affected. And this thing has been there. Of course, it is increasing because, of course, our population is increasing. And at the same time, we can actually see that within the cities, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Ibadan, Abuja, maybe even Kano and Kaduna, when these incidents happen, it actually draws a lot of attention. But the majority of these incidents would always happen in the fringes, in the places where not a lot of people have access to news. I digress, but just quickly, I would like to add that it is even likely that the incident in Anam, when the 5 people, who sadly passed away, were rescued, it is also likely that they were still alive, and that the people didn't know what to do. And there was no response, because there was probably no CPR, probably no, resuscitation. And so we can go to the policy, point where we talk about how can we make the agencies do their job. It actually has to come from the presidential table, and the reason is because we cannot simply talk these agencies into working. We can't talk them into working. However, somebody in power can mandate them, can force them into some sort of state of emergency to perform their functions, either by merging them, by dividing them, or scrapping them, right? And setting them to work. The truth is, in places like Taraba, where boats, people are still traversing the water on barges. A barge is just I would say, a piece of wood scrapped together. People are traversing the waters with barges, fishing on them. It's capsizing at a very alarming rate. And these things are not being reported. And that's the state of the waterway, transport system. We're not even talking about speedboats, because those are very expensive. Remember that this is a country where people still do fishing. And they're not fishing on trolleys. They're fishing on canoes. And the likelihood of canoes capsizing after a very strong wind is very high. And these things are happening. And that's also an accident. Those are things that we're not even talking about right now. So what are we talking about here? Enforcing, the policies, my colleagues have actually talked about regulations, has to come from the table of the president, because it is not just something we can talk about from the central popular places. We have to look at what is obtainable across Nigeria, what is obtainable as a practice across Nigeria, and how can people assess the slightest amount of safety. If we ask a question now, we say, how much is a life jacket? You may be astonished. The price may be much more than the minimum wage. I don't know the price. It may be up to the, it may cost so much. And when we are talking about people who are trying to scrap a living, out of fishing, asking them to get a life jacket that is not free may not become, the top priority at the point. And these are people who go out every day to do the same thing. So we are at a point where people would rather take risks with their lives than do safety, because safety is too expensive.
People would rather take risk with their lives than do safety,
because safety is more expensive.
Okay. You said something about first aid, when the people were rescued, that it could have even been saved. Anyway, we'll come back to that. But let's go back to our Zoom guest now. That is Engineer Brimo. A lot of issues have been raised, and this also borders on the issue of adequate equipment for NIWA to perform its function. How well equipped is NIWA in ensuring safety on waterways in the country?
So much. Good morning. And let me come back to Lagos. I'm the area manager in Lagos area office. And at every jetties, at least we have more than 72 jetties that are commercially operating in Lagos State. And at every jetty, we have what we call our water marshals. These water marshals are safety men. They are at every jetty checking your loading and your offloading. There is nobody. I think we have 99% compliance in Lagos State as of our inland waterways. They must wear life jackets. It's a norm. And 1% is just negligence. But 99% of people using waterways in Lagos State are always on life jackets, because our water marshals are at every jetty when you are boarding. And at every jetty you are boarding, we are doing what we call safety talks, safety campaigns. So, and buying of this life jackets is not by individual. It is not the people that are boarding that buy life jackets. It is the operators. We have several meetings with the boat operators, boat owners. Boat owners knows that if they don't have life jackets on board their boats, they cannot move from any jetty in Lagos State. They cannot. And on their way going to wherever they are going, we have major 5 points. Between Marina and Badagry, we have 2 points, 2 boats that are always on patrol. Between Marina and Ikorodu, we have a boat station on Tomiland Bridge, patrolling, knowing how and where they are moving, and who is speeding, over speeding. We have done several safety meetings, safety talks. At least once in every quarter, we do safety campaign. We have different local governments and we have zones, and we have the way we monitor them. Nothing, yes, people like to, especially in Nigeria, we like to do what is abnormal. I know that incident was because it was during the holiday time and maybe there was no enforcement. It is so sad, but 99% of people that are boarding boats in Lagos knows that they must use life jackets. You will see our people at every jetty seizing life jackets. Some life jackets are bad. They cannot even hold you when there is an incident. That is why you see our people checking the life jackets for their expiring dates, for their weights. Because most people, we do campaigns because we want to tell our people that if you are using life jackets, not just by using the life jackets has meaning. The weight of the life jacket must correspond with the weight of the people wearing it. And every life jacket has expiring dates. Those are what we check, and we do it diligently in Lagos State. So we have more than 10 patrol boats always patrolling our waterways in Lagos by the National Inland Waterways Authority. At every jetties, we have our marshals. So there is no way you will board and will not be on life jackets. There is no way. So the incident that happened in Anambra was a shock. Most of our boats in Lagos are not owned by National Inland Waterways. We don't own boats. It's only recently because of a lot of, when we did our yearly routine inspection, most of our boats are not good. They did not certify our inspection, our survey. That is why we stopped more than 70% of boats operating from Ikorodu, and we had to put a quick intervention by bringing a 60-passenger ferry to do the running from Ikorodu to VI, pending when those people will repair their boats or bring other boats on board, because passengers will complain. If you take the boat out, what do you want us to use? We have issues of even passengers not allowing us to do our enforcement. There was a day passengers were practically beating newer staff just because we stopped boat from operating, because that boat is not seaworthy. They were practically beating my staff in Lagos here, just because they say they must go home and they don't have any other alternative. We had to write an emergency to the headquarters to provide a boat immediately. That is why they deploy one boat for us to use pending when we finish all our monitoring. So okay, it's not that we are not doing things.
All right, Engineer Brima, from what you have said, you are saying that Lagos State is doing its best to regulate the waterways. But let me give you this report. This is, according to Adoga, there are so many cases of boat mishaps that have happened that have not been recorded, maybe because of the people involved or the areas where these things happen. But for those that were reported in 2023 alone, there's a report that says that over 300 lives were lost to boat accidents across the country in 2023 alone, with Kwara and Anambra states recording the most deaths. Now, of course, on the list, we also have Lagos State, we have Kebbi, we have Niger, and if you remember, in January this year, we also had a boat mishap in Anambra and all of that, because I remember we had a conversation on, safety on our waterways, even right here on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, all these issues, if you find out, if you carry out a report, most of them are due to overloading, faulty engines, lack of life jackets, the same issues that, have been talked about. So, but let's move away from Lagos State now, and of course, move away from you, Engineer Brima. Let's get to Shehu Usman, Dr. Shehu Usman. I want you to, you're the Deputy Director of Transport School, Nigerian Institute of Transport Technology. I want you to tell us what the myths are concerning rivers, concerning our waterways, concerning drowning. If this is affecting, safety, as regards our waterways, just share with us. I'm sure you have seen some, you've experienced some, or you've heard, some of these myths.
Thank you for this, and I think Engineer Ilori has started that by mentioning the issue of the importance of navigation and navigability on the waterways. First of all, the water transportation is not just happening anyhow. Of course, it has a way too, just like the train has its track and the bus has its own roads, and then on the way for the waterway transport, of course, navigation is the key, and that is how these boats move from one point to the other. In Lagos, we don't have many issues relating to navigability, but along the rivers, Niger, Benue, tributaries, and several others, including coastal areas too, navigation is a very tedious thing, because in many cases these routes are not being marked and are not being buoyed to show you where to go and where not to go, and are not regularly dredged or maintained to a very good draft that can accommodate the kind of boats that use them, because rivers are always constantly being silted. You don't have them on a minimum or rather on a standard depth all the time. The depth keeps on changing. So because of this, you find out that most of the accidents that happen around Niger and some parts of Taraba and all that is all related to navigation. In Niger particularly, boats can hit storms that were resulting from trees that were felled long ago, and when the water level goes up, it covers them up, and while they are moving on the water, they go and hit such. And also there are occasions whereby unknown areas that are relatively shallow could turn out to be deep, and areas that are deep could turn out to be shallow as a result of siltation of the water. So if there are no adequate surveillance and detection of such changes of the water levels, and also the flow of the current of this water relative to the type of boats that are using such routes, you find out that there will be a conflict of depth versus the weight of the boat that is moving. And where there is overloading, in many cases it results to accidents, because these boats operate naturally according to the principles of flotation, and you cannot overload a boat and still expect it to move on a shallow water safely. So, but the essence of ensuring safety in this way is that there must be some level of surveillance. At every route, there should be an authority that is concerned to actually survey these routes, ensure that they are good for navigation at least once in a day, and then report back and advise all boat operators and users of their service as to how fair this water is, how good is the route, if there are impediments along the way, what are they, how to bypass them or how to remove them. This is very necessary. The waterways is not like the sea. The ocean is deep enough, vast enough, and has no minor encumbrances to navigation. But on the waterways or along the coastal areas, definitely a review of the condition of the routes, the channels, and the waterways through which these boats pass must always be updated, and that information can be used by the operators to know where to pass, where not to pass, when even to sail and when not to sail, because there are conditions that will actually require no sail at all. So these are some of the things that has to be considered over a time in order to ensure that the navigable routes are safe enough.
didn't quite answer my question, but I thank you for that perspective that you have, shared with us. I'm talking about the myths of our people, cultural beliefs, traditions, and all of that. If that is playing a role in the safety of our waterways, because of course, when this incident happened last week, we heard so many things that happened, from the point where they were even still safe to the point where this incident happened. So maybe Adoga would share with me the myths, share with us some of the myths of our people as regards traveling on the waterways, and then how this is impacting negatively.
Some of it is actually funny. I saw a video on social media where someone was sacrificing Fanta to the river gods, to provide safe passage.
And one of the survivors even said that he had to throw some currency in the water for him to be able to float out.
People have their beliefs, and we cannot totally discredit them. Even the Vikings sailing, the British Channel, sacrificed animals to their gods to provide them safe passage. But what we need to do is to educate people, that river spirits, even though they may or may not exist, do not ultimately determine whether you survive or die. And we need to really teach people the proper way to behave on water, just the way we teach people the proper way to behave while driving. People know that you have to trafficate when you're going that way. People know you have to, you have to take care of your brake pads when you are driving so that you can actually have an effective brake. The same thing has to go on our waterways. Water education, I would say, is actually lacking in our school systems, and perhaps just like he said, we have a country with so many states having inland waterways, but the corresponding information about waterways is actually missing. We don't have enough information about it. For example, if I'm trying to get to let's say Bauchi, for instance, I'm pretty sure there are rivers that can actually take me there. But the only thing in my mind is the road. So what that means is that I'd have no information about anything, relating to water in that regard. But there are people plying those routes inside those villages. And these are the people we need to be talking about. I like what Lagos State has done. They've actually done a remarkable job. But you can actually see that they are doing that remarkable job because of the amount of interest in the water transport system. If you're trying to get from Ikorodu to the island, it's actually shorter to get there by water. So you see, there's a response to it because of the economic activity around it. So there are places where these economic activities are not necessarily, as buoyant as we have in Lagos. So therefore, there is a neglect and there's a decay in those systems. So the myths are actually going in line of culture, and education has to follow. Education has to follow, not discrediting what people believe, but adding to it, adding a safety, I would say, level to that prevailing culture. Where people are sacrificing to the idols and the gods, and the spirits of the river, they should also try to, get a life jacket. And I guess this is where government comes in.
Okay, thank you very much. Education, people need to be educated, and that is why government comes in. And I believe that NIWA also is listening to this. But let's go to our Lagos studio where we still have engineer Emmanuel Ilori. Now, let's look at what comprehensive measures do you think, should be carried, out on our waterways? I mean, going by your experience, I know that you must have had experience with how water transportation is run in other climes, because you are this former senior marine surveyor, Lloyd's Register, London. Can you give us an idea of how things are done in other climes?
Well, let's first of all look at what we have. We are blessed with an inland waterways authority, but that's usually the important thing. We must have a statutory organization responsible for these activities. Now, we have very beautiful laws that empower inland waterways authority. But one thing we lack, and all these things that we have been discussing, is technical development. And I will repeat that, technical development, and again and again and again. From what we have seen so far, technical development is lacking, either from the design of the boat, from the enforcement, from the navigational aids. Inland waterways have not been empowered. In better climes, I think somebody was talking about monitoring. You cannot move from A to B without being noticed. And if anything happens, they will have activated search and rescue to make sure that they meet you. And their response time is so fast. In Nigeria, what is the response time even for the search and rescue? Like our colleague from the environment was saying, what is the after effect response to make sure that person survives? The boat that's taking them, look at them, they are so rickety. And where's the technical standard there? Everybody wants to do NIWA's job, but nobody wants to take on the responsibility. I mean, NIWA should be a technically empowered organization. And we need to interrogate NIWA. We cannot run away from that. Over years, what have they done? And then going forward, the responsibility to safety of life in Nigerian waters needs to be taken seriously. We are skirting around the issue, but the important thing is that let us empower NIWA technically, that they have the capability to respond to these issues. And I go back that the airline industry example is there. The president took action, and you can see that there was a reversal of air accidents. So we need to do the same thing with NIWA and inland waterways. If there are issues that need to be taken to Mr. President's table, yes. We're just talking about recently about the Lagos to Calabar River project. And we talk of trillions that will be invested in that. I don't think we will be investing half that as much to improve the riverways or the inland waterways segment. Let us give that organization the tools that it needs to do the job. If there is a deficiency, yes, let us take it on headly. Take the River Thames, because you were talking about foreign climes. The River Thames serves London and beyond so effectively, and it is constantly monitored. It's technically developed. People who work there are technically trained, so they know what they are doing. So why not our inland waterways? Go to the continent, the same thing. Netherlands is a country that is made of water, just inland waterways network. But the inland waterways network serves that country efficiently. Their economy depends on their inland waterways network. Now we have 28 states. For goodness sake, we need to utilize the inland waterways within the 28 states network, not only to develop our economy for commercial purposes, and to make it alternative way to travel. Now, Nigeria is a nation that is so dependent on road travel and road network, and our development is taking place along the road network. What happens? We invest billions of naira, and the big lorries, they go on the road and spoil the road. On the other hand, we have 28 states that we can adequately develop your industries along the waterway network, take the weight off the roads, and make sure that Nigeria takes its place as a developed nation. So we have issues there that we think we can push to the table of Mr. President and say, listen, I want the inland waterways network as the vein of this country to drive the development of of the road network. Take the heavy vehicles off the road. The industry that are developing along our road network, take them away. Take the Ikorodu to Shagamu, which was developed recently. That road is unpassable because you have heavy trucks plying that road. We need to start to think outside the box and see how we can utilize our God-given resources. I mean, UK is not different from Nigeria in terms of road and riverways network. Neither the continent, even the China. So we are blessed, but we are not utilizing the blessings of God.
Engineer Ilori, for giving us a comprehensive measures there on how we can utilize our water transportation in this country. When we return, we shall be looking at the first aid regulations. Stay with us.
Welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA, and we're discussing safety on our waterways. Our guests are still very much with us, and speaking with Engineer Sarat Brima, now the Lagos area manager of NIWA. I would like to ask, so far some terms have been used in this conversation. We've heard about standardize, regularize, monitor, enforce activities on our waterways. I want you to tell us, my colleague did ask earlier about, what NIWA is doing. I know you want to speak for Lagos, but you could just speak on a broader note now. What are the constraints, for NIWA in meeting its obligation, in meeting its role, on our waterways?
The National Inland Waterways Authority has put in place because of all these boat mishaps is a lot now. Now we have what we call search and rescue stations. We have in about 11 states now. In this year budget, there's an additional 7 that will be added. The search and rescue is for us to respond fast to incidents, because we don't pray for incidents, but it will happen. So it is the response to it that matters, and the type of how quick NIWA can respond to both mishap so that lives can be saved. So that is why we have established search and rescue stations. In that search and rescue station, we have radios, we have what we call blooming, that every boat will be given a gadget so that they will press immediately there's a boat mishap, so that it will signal to NIWA, and NIWA will send a rescue immediately. We have established training schools. We have one in Warri, one in Lagos, one in Port Harcourt, and we are trying to establish one in the north. This is for them, all the boat captains, to be trained. They will be trained so that they will at least have the normal rules and regulations of navigation on our inland waterways. Because most of our boat captains, they are illiterate, they don't even know anything. Most of them, they will tell you they learn from their grandfather, because they are water people. So they don't have any formal education before they jump into being a boat captain. So we have established training schools now. So every boat that NIWA want to certify must go through that school, and that school will now give them a certificate. It is that certificate that will make the boat registrable by National Inland Waterways Authority. We have established water marshals. The water marshals are going to be deployed to every state now. We started from Lagos, we have done in Port Harcourt, we are moving to Warri, Niger, Kwara, and Anambra. So all these water marshals, they will be at every loading point, which are jetties. So they will monitor activities that are happening before boarding and when people are deboarding. They will check the life jackets. NIWA will give life jackets where necessary, but it is the boat operators, the owner of the boats, that are mandated to provide boat jackets for every boat that is on voyage. NIWA has established that, and will keep improving on that. All our monitoring boats, we have deployed so many now. With this year, with this new MD now, he gave so many boats for patrolling so that people will monitor what is happening on the inland waterways. Money is being made available for fueling so that you will not be having issues of there is no fund. Naturally, like Engineer Ilori has said, NIWA is underfunded. There is a lot of negligence by the government on NIWA. If we have spent half of what is being spent on the road, on water, we will not be talking about this. Using the waterways is very expensive. The Netherlands, China, they did invest a lot of money to develop their inland waters. That is why they are using it effectively today. It takes a lot of money, but still it is not as expensive as what we are spending on our roads. And it will make our roads even stay longer if policies are being made to move back bulk cargoes out of the road. So I pray and I wish that inland waterways will be focused on so that we will develop it. 28 states are interconnected by this water. So if it is made navigable all year round, and there are buoys, if there are navigational buoys being laid all over these routes, I think the inland waterways need to be given effective funding.
Thank you very much, Engineer Brima, for your thoughts there. The inland waterways needs more funding there. Now let's come back to the studio where we still have Godwin Adaga, who is health, safety and environment professional. And I have two questions for you. The first one is, we're still talking about these safety measures. And how can we adapt the use of technology like GPS, you understand, in as a tracking system, you know, and how can it help improve emergency response during accidents on the waters? Then secondly, actually, is that in every accident in this country, particularly either road or water accidents, you find that the people will just be milling around, they will be milling around the victims, confused, don't know what to do, don't know how to assist them, don't know what kind of first aid to apply. So my question is, what are the basic handouts Nigerians should be aware of when there is someone in distress, especially when someone is involved in a water accident?
I'll start with the second question, because there's an element of, I would say, culture there. When something happens to someone, it used to be the case that people want to jump into the scene and try to do rescue. Maybe rush them to the hospital, or just try to resuscitate them. But, you know, recently with, I would say, the rise of social media, we've actually seen that more people are, I would say, turned towards sensationalism. People want to tell stories. People want to take pictures. People just want to hang around and see and hear what happened. And, you know, so many times someone just, you know, collapses and everybody's hands on their head and, you know, trying to hear what happened, or somebody, you know, falls. So what we are actually saying is that we're not, I would say, breeding a culture where people are much more eager to be, you know, witnesses rather than actually active participators in rescue operations. And see, at the end of the day, we can talk about the government and, you know, how they can actually help us, but safety is actually first an individual thing. It is first an individual responsibility before it becomes another person's responsibility. Now we're talking about government. People need to be educated on what to do when things happen. We see these things in movies, but the idea that, you know, we've seen it in movies and, you know, read it in a book, the idea that that's sufficient is false. People aren't aware of what to even do. And on the other hand, people are also scared to do what they are supposed to do. There was a case where someone collapsed, you know, she was rushed to the hospital, and the person that rushed her to the hospital was arrested and accused of being, you know, the perpetrator of whatever happened to the lady that fainted. So people are scared of participating in rescue. Now, we need to, first of all, educate people on how to perform simple rescue operations. I'm not asking people to put their lives at, you know, in danger. I'm not asking people to jump into a fire and try to rescue people. That's the job for trained professionals. But people should know how to do simple things like CPR. People should know how to, you know, do a mouth to mouth. You know, people should know how to respond when somebody hits their head on the floor. People should know how to lie them on their side and try to get them to breathe. You know, there was an incident when a footballer collapsed on the field of play, and all the other footballers, all the other teammates, they were shocked. They didn't know what to do until someone came and put his hand inside the footballer's throat. He was aware that what was happening was that the person might have collapsed, but he also needed to breathe. And that singular act of opening his throat saved him 2-3 seconds enable the medical team to quickly rush to him and take him to safety. So yes, people are much more, prone to just watch. This is where education comes in. We need a mass sensitization, right? Targeted at teaching people what to do. It may not look like it's having impact, but when you sing a message, often people are actually becoming more aware of what to do. And we've done it for the roads. We did jingles, we did adverts of how not to drive and drink, and now people know it's wrong to drive and drink. Even if they still do it, it's somewhere in their consciousness. So we need that kind of movement. And of course, you talked about technology, how we can leverage technology to improve not only navigability but also safety. I like the fact that they've spoken about how rivers actually change. Rivers change, the routes change, the depths change, even it changes. So there are places in River Benue where when it's dry season, you can actually see a heap of sand. It's visible. There's a heap of sand. If you came there during the rainy season, it was a free ride. But in the dry season, there's a different channel. So what are we going to do with tech? We need to employ low-hanging fruits. We have Google Map, that people who do transport services actually use to navigate their way. If you don't know somewhere in Abuja, you can just put the location and you can see how it takes you. We need to see how we can bring that to the boats. Now, I don't know if it already exists. Perhaps it does in Lagos, because Lagos is highly technologically advanced. But we need to see how we can incorporate sensors and monitors, right, that communicate locations to the stations that she mentioned. Now, at the same time, it would have been much better for us to have agents and officers patrolling these waterways. But we're talking about 28 states. How much funding would that require, and would that be done very quickly? It might take a while for that to happen. But what we can do right now, currently, is that if we can actually incorporate technology that sends messages, distress messages, updates to stations that are close by, what that would do is, without even going there, without even following these people around, you can actually see live status of these boats across the water. Okay. And these are things that are easy to do because they are Google enabled.
All right, thank you so much, Godwin Adoga. I like to I would have really loved to go to Dr. Osman, but I would like Engineer Ilori to first respond to this question about what the private sector can do. So much has been said. There's so many lapses, and we know that government cannot do everything. So is there a way the private sector can, key into this sector, just so that we could enhance the activities on our waterways and also improve safety?
Thank you very much. We need to harness the resources of the inland waterways, and there is money to be made on the inland waterways, but our investors need to be encouraged to take these opportunities seriously. Unfortunately, nobody is going to invest on a route that has no map, that has no navigable ways. So that's why some of our investors are on is a partnership. And then once our investors see the opportunity and they see the enabled environment, of course, they will participate. We've raised the issue of different countries that are using their waterways for their national economic development. Yes, but it's a partnership between the government and the private sector. Once they come into it, then it's going to be easy. You don't want to see these rickety boats on the water anymore. Once NIWA comes up with standardized boats that have some of this equipment, of course, we can then see the investors participating. Lagos State, for example, when they were told that yours is not to regulate the inland waterways, they invested in modern boats that can carry passengers. The situation where you see a wooden boat that is overloaded, for goodness sake, shouldn't exist on our waters anymore. Okay, yes, there's artisanal fishing on the riverine areas, but why can't we use modern boats to fish in these waters that are properly equipped to respond to emergencies? So there's a dialogue there between regulators and the industry, where the economic opportunities are and where they can take advantage of it. Of course, we are not saying that our traditional people should be run out of job, but what your great-grandfather used to do can no more apply today. So that's where the awareness issue comes. Let them be empowered if need be, and then we can then take it forward. The issue of financing the waterways is a big problem. But then what stops Nigeria for saying, okay, we have a maritime development bank where funds will be available, because we know the paucity of funds from the government. But then where we have a maritime development bank where investors can go, where we can develop these local people, then we can see a turnaround in the fortunes of our inland waterways. Yes, it is work in progress. We have seen the activities of Lagos NIWA, because that again an issue of capacity development. I know that Engineer Serrat was given the opportunity to develop, and she is performing. But then 28 states of the inland waterways, what is the presence of personnel in the 28 states? How developed are they? Are they utilizing the laws that says inland waterways must provide best people for the Nigerian waterways? Part of their responsibility. So we need to interrogate what we have at the moment and see how we can move the industry forward. But yes, there's a partnership there between the private sector and the inland waterways, because there is money. I know that because I've been part of that system.
Engineer Ilori, there is a partnership between the inland waterways and the private sector. Let's go to Zaria now, where we still have Dr. Usman. Let's look at the partnership between the states and NIWA now. What level of collaboration should states be involved in, especially with law enforcement, maritime safety, and transportation safety, in identifying the causes of these unfortunate and preventable disasters?
Thank you, Ademola. I think the partnership between states and NIWA should no longer be antagonistic. It has been so before, and that was the major thing that has been barring development of waterways by states, despite the fact that we know 28 states of this country have been bypassed by waterways or are covered by the waterways, which can be also navigable. So state governments, particularly those along the banks of River Niger and Benue, which is the major arteries, should now cooperate the more with NIWA. And also, especially the laws have also mandated that, because it has been over 20 years we have been trying to resolve conflicts between states and the federal government in terms of NIWA laws versus laws proposed by states. All these laws should be seen to have failed, and now what we need is good collaboration between the states and NIWA, and but most especially NIWA should be able to obtain what we have been saying, presidential intervention. Mind you, waterways transport is one of the important modes of transport in many countries and is a source of development to many countries, and we have it in abundance to exploit, to harness, and to make it more useful to Nigeria. So state governments, this is the time to actually keep that antagonistic approach, discuss fairly with NIWA, and then seek for intervention from the federal government, especially to review ownership, operation, and development of jetties in every state. Also to help to develop and deploy new naval architecture for boats that are to be used in our waterways. Because at the moment what we have, they are too traditional, and it cannot be so. We cannot sustain that. We have to come up with a very good research to develop a very good architecture that can suit the type of boats, ferries that we can use. And we must be able to standardize the type of jetties that we operate in this country. there are lots of revenues to be derived from there, both from the jetties and from operating the boats. So both the state government and the federal government, that is through NIWA, should be able to now start discussing in earnest to be able to come on amicable terms, because there is a huge commercial implication of neglecting waterways. We lose revenue, and also we incur high costs on other modes of transport. So waterways transportation should be seen as a key transportation system in this country. Especially, it was the first. There was no railway when there was waterways. There was no roads when there was waterways for Mongo Park and all other colonialists to be able to move around this country. The same thing, countries later on come to develop. If you check this Yangtze River in China, it's the major source of development of the Chinese economy at the moment, because it was able to cover the entire hinterland, which rivers Niger and Benue and its tributaries is doing in Nigeria. So all state governments or states that are within the waterways network should come up with a cool head, discuss with NIWA and particularly the federal government, and also come up with amicable understanding on how to develop ventures. I'm not saying one, there are many ventures that could be developed along the waterways across this country.
Very
but
much.
most especially.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Gidado Shehu Usman. Very fine point that you have made there. We do appreciate you. Because of time, we need to wrap up the conversation. Sarat Brima, I would like you to just, in 30 seconds, wrap up your thoughts as we round off the conversation.
Hello, sorry. So National Inland Waterways Authority is open-handed. We are ready for collaboration. We cannot do it all alone. We need the states to collaborate with National Inland Waterways Authority. Some states are not viable commercially. You cannot expect private people to buy boats and say they want to go to Taraba or Niger now because of profit involved. But if federal government can buy boats, put it there like a CSR, just to make people board good boats. And if it is the states that want to take up that, yes, NIWA will definitely collaborate with all states to do that. Because we just want...
Engineer Sarata Brima, of course, you're open for collaboration with states, private sector, whoever is interested. And of course, you want the government to do much more. We appreciate you, Engineer Sarat Brima, Lagos Area Manager, National Inland Waterways Authority, for joining us for the conversation. We also appreciate Engineer Emmanuel Ilori, the former Senior Marine Surveyor, Lloyd's Register, London. Thank you for your insights on the program. We do appreciate you. Of course, Dr. Gidado Shehu Usman, Deputy Director, Transport School, Nigerian Institute of Transport Technology, Zaria. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. And of course, Godwin Adoga, Health, Safety and Environment Expert. It was a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Good Morning, Nigeria, this Tuesday. Many thanks for watching. Please remain tuned to the NTA. I'm Ian Ray John.
And I'm Ademola Ade. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.